بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين على أمور الدنيا والدين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم اللهم آمين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we continue inshallah with our lessons on the common mistakes in Salah. I want to revisit the questions from yesterday briefly. Our respected brother, he voiced an opinion. He said that wiping is not permissible after using the restroom, relieving oneself, that water is mandatory and the only time a person can wipe if there's no water available. And I said that is not what I've heard from our scholars, that's not what I read in our textbooks. I did some research and it's unanimous. Ibn Qudama rahimahullah, he says that this is ijma'. And so if there's something that maybe an individual scholar holds a minority opinion I don't know of, but across the madhahib, our scholars agree that there are three tiers or three options to purifying oneself after relieving oneself. And the lowest tier is to wipe only without washing. And that's permissible. And it's allowed, and the Prophet ﷺ permitted it for the companions. And so we said this is one of the common misunderstandings Muslims have. They think that washing is absolutely necessary after using the restroom. And it is not necessary. It is the preferred option. Of course, we encourage it. But it isn't mandatory. And we can't make mandatory what Allah didn't make mandatory. And so it's important to have this knowledge. And especially in the Western society, the majority of public restrooms predominantly don't have water available in the stalls. So this is permissible. It is permissible for a Muslim to wipe, although it is better to what? Grab a water bottle, take some water with you. It's not too difficult. But subhanAllah, if you are in a situation where you don't have the water or you didn't bring water with you, it is permissible to wipe. And the sister asked, I mentioned also that it isn't permissible to wipe with wet wipes. It has to be dry wipes. And this surprised some. They're like, why dry wipes but not wet wipes? They felt maybe it was counterintuitive. Maybe wet wipes would be better to clean oneself. And so our scholars traditionally, in the books of the madhahib, they said no. I read let me revise. I'm sure, I'm confident, but if somebody expresses a concern, it's always good to double check, triple check. So I checked in the madhab al-Maliki, in the Shafi'i school, they express clearly that if a person wipes and they don't use water, the wiping must be done with dry paper towel or dry, toilet paper, or if they use rocks traditionally in the deserts, or leaves. If somebody's in the wilderness, and they said it has to be dry. It can't be wet. Only unless they're using. Some people they take wet paper towels. They get the paper towels wet to absorb the water, and then they squeeze the water out of the paper towels. In that case, they're not washing. They're not wiping. They're washing, and that's fine if they're using paper towels to absorb water. But if they're using wet wipes as an alternative to washing, it isn't sufficient. And so that is, again, something I was already sure of, but I double-checked, and I'm positive, and again, I confirm that I read by Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, and other scholars, and so this is verified, reliable information, bi'idhnillah. If anybody wants me to share the resources, I can even share that as well, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. You just have to speak Arabic. But yes, Brother Naqib. So the brother asked a very good question. Can they use wet wipes and then use dry wipes? No, but they could use dry wipes and then use wet wipes. It has to be dry wipes first. It can't be wet wipes first. So it's very specific. They use some rationale, but I don't want to get into details of the fiqh and the nuances, but the general is like, no. You wash or you wipe. Wet wipes are something of a personal preference. If you want to use wet wipes as a personal preference, be my guest, but after you did the obligatory wiping, which is the dry wipes. Is that clear? Inshallah. Brother Abdurrahman, did you have something you wanted to add?
Same question that he asked you.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, great minds think alike, mashallah. So, inshallah, I've satisfied, the questions regarding those masail. Another question, Haji?
I concerned about medication.
Yes.
How about I have the medication on the fasting that I need to use the when we put on the mouth.
In the inhaler for asthma?
Yeah. Yes.
Is that for the asthma?
Yes.
So we're not doing, I can answer this briefly, but in general, I want to focus on the masail of prayer. But for inhalers, for a person with asthma, contemporary scholars, this is a contemporary issue. It doesn't exist in traditional fiqh, at least to the best of my knowledge. Inhalers for asthma, at least in traditional books, I haven't come across it. But contemporary scholars have done research on this issue. And they've taken two positions. There are those who see it as impermissible. They don't see it as permissible, and they say if a person must use an inhaler, then they break their fast. I don't hold this position. I don't follow this position personally. The second position is what I follow, that inhalers are permissible while fasting. It isn't nutritional. It isn't food or drink that one consumes, and it doesn't fulfill the purposes of nutrition. And so for that reason, inhalers don't break the fasting, and your fasting is fine. But I want to share that there are scholars of the other position that inhalers do break the fast. So with that, if a person has strong asthma, then khalas, they must use it throughout the day. But if they can wait till after the iftar, then the preferred option is to wait after iftar, if they can. But if they can't, adopt the position, that is the position that I personally follow and adopt from the scholars, that it is permissible and it doesn't invalidate the fasting. Wallahu a'lam. So these are just some previous masail, and so I wanted to clarify that. The last mas'ala that we touched upon towards the end of our talk last night was on Surah Al-Fatiha. And we mentioned after completing the prerequisites and making the takbirat al-ihram and standing in prayer, the first amal that is fard is Surah Al-Fatiha. And so we mentioned that a person has to read Surah Al-Fatiha correct, from beginning to end. And I shared some common mistakes folks might, I found personally in my experience of teaching, interacting, that oftentimes there are some key words that are very common in different cultures. We mentioned, with Americans, those who are raised upon the English tongue and don't really grow up speaking Arabic or, learning the Quran, they struggle with the ha, right? So when they say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, they can't distinguish between the two ha's in Arabic. There's a ha and there's a ha. There's a soft H and a hard and a heavy H in Arabic. In English, we don't have that. It's just one H. So it's important to learn both ha's and to learn to pronounce them both correctly. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. It's important to learn to say that. I also mentioned in other cultures, they have a hard time with the ta. So they have a hard time saying the ta, so they say da, the da. And if a person, of course, if this is all they can do and they've tried their best, Allah doesn't burden a soul more than it can bear. But everybody's obligated to learn and first exert effort. And so the da is wrong. There is not a da, it's a ta. The letter is ta. So when a Muslim says, Ihdina siratal mustaqim, that's the correct pronunciation. And if a person changes it to da, they've altered the letter. They've altered the word, therefore the meaning of the verse completely changes. Instead of saying guide us to the straight path, you're saying sirada, which is a whole other word. I personally don't know if there's an Arabic word that sirada that actually holds a meaning in Arabic. I don't know. Maybe linguists can enlighten us, we can research. But it doesn't mean the straight path anymore. It means something different. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim. That's the word. And so it's important to learn that correct pronunciation. The other common mistake we mentioned is al-ladhina. And al-ladhina, we said a lot of people, they go one of two mistakes. Either they say al-lazina with a zai, very common, very, very, very common. In various cultures you find they pronounce it al-lazina. And that might be even like predominant in majority of the Muslim world. People they can't pronounce the that, so they say za instead. Instead of saying ustad, they say ustaz. Z. The thing is, it's not ustaz. The word is ustad. With non-Quran words, it's no big deal. It's okay, ustaz, it's fine. But with the Quran, it's important to learn the correct pronunciation. And so it's not allazina, it's alladhina. And others say alladina with a D, and that's also wrong. And so getting that right is important. And so that's a matter of pronunciation. And I mentioned last night that the Quran is learned under scholars. A person must study under a sheikh. And the scholars, they mention generally every Muslim should know which surahs. Fatiha. They should know Ikhlas and the last two Mu'awwadatain, Falaq and Nas. And they should know either, or for at least Wadduha to Surah An-Nas. Every Muslim should memorize these surahs. To make a goal, I memorize to Wadduha to Surah An-Nas. Or at least Juz Amma. Right? Some scholars, they advise at least Juz Amma. Every Muslim should know these surahs. And they should know this juz, or at least Wadduha to An-Nas, with a scholar. They studied with a qari, somebody qualified, somebody with an ijazah, who learned from trained scholars, and who's been certified to teach. And they learn to pronounce it correctly at the hand of a sheikh. This is my encouragement. This is I don't share this to stress people out and to cause doubt about their salah and waswas. The reason I share this is to tell us we need to learn our deen from the qualified authorities and stop and not just take it based off of assumptions or based off of what we learned as children. It's important to exert effort and to learn our deen from qualified scholars. And that's my encouragement. It isn't to cause waswas and doubt and everybody's over here in salah thinking about their Fatiha 10 times and did I say it right or wrong. That's not the purpose. That's not what I'm trying to cause. Right now, do your best and pray your salah and don't pay attention to the waswas. But make effort to learn. And alhamdulillah, with the modern world and remote learning, you can connect with qualified ulama all around the world. You know, and for a few dollars an hour, it's really not that hard. And so I advise everybody to make the intention to memorize this much from the Quran, to memorize Wadduha to An-Nas, perfected this Ramadan. And if you know more, memorize from Al-Fajr to Nas and perfect it. And if you can do a little bit more, go from Amma to Nas and perfect that much. And revise these and let these surahs be like your surahs for Salah. Rotate between them. Rotate between them. Fajr, read one of the longer ones. Maghrib, read one of the mid-length ones. You know, Isha, Maghrib, one of the shorter ones. Rotate between them so that you never lose these surahs. And make sure you learn with a qualified scholar. No matter your age, everybody can learn. However young or old we are, we can memorize these surahs. They're not too hard if we put in the time and the consistency. And so that is the last advice, is to give time to the Quran. Tomorrow night, inshallah ta'ala, it's Thursday night, we will speak about how to reflect on Surah Al-Fatiha. More of not the technical rules of Fatiha, but more of the intellectual, spiritual aspect. How to be mindful of Fatiha and how to find khushu' in your salah. Because that's one of the most important things in salah. The ajr of your salah depends on the khushu'. The validity of your salah depends on the fiqh, but the ajr depends on the khushu'. And validity means you checked off the box. There's no sin on you. Ajr means the reward. Now, how much reward you're going to get for your salah? 1/10, 1/8, half, 100%. All of that depends on khushu'. Right? So we're also going to speak a little bit about that tomorrow night, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum. Yes, brother, I'll take the question, inshallah.
Very quick, there's a common problem with the dad too. Like some people say ad-dallin, which means the one who are showing them the way.
No.
Ad-dallin,
No.
which means the one who are using the shade
No.
to sit under.
No.
And the dallin is the one who went astray. So
No,
that's
no,
also
no. The brother added to Surah Al-Fatiha, and actually this is something I overlooked. The dad and the lam at the end. So the dallin, the da, is not dallin. And subhanAllah, you'll be surprised, but Arabs oftentimes cannot distinguish between dad and dha. Arabs often, when they say like azim, sometimes they mix it with a da, sometimes a dha. You know, and so this is something I found, even in Arab communities, they mix up these two letters. And so it's important to know dad correctly. There actually one I wanted to also add to this is the lam. Wala dal. The lam, the last lam on dal, you have to hold it because it's mushaddada. The lam has a shadda. So when you say wala dal, you have to hold that lam. You can't say wala dalin. It's incorrect. You've left the letter out. The lam is emphasized, it's mushaddad. So you have to say وَلَا Hold it. Hold it for a moment and then continue. And so that's also a common mistake that sometimes folks might make. We ask Allah to grant us understanding, to increase us in knowledge, and to accept our ibadat. Allahumma ameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa jazakumullah khair.